Okay. All right. Hey, Duncan, thanks for tuning in. Pleasure to have you on the Personal Evolution podcast. So I thought, we might start off with just, I guess you telling us a bit more about yourself, what brought you here, and what you're excited about, what you're excited to talk about.
So my name is Duncan Bassground Brown. I am from Oxford in the United Kingdom, and I help people to stop drinking. Well, actually, I don't really. What I help them to do is stop hating their lives, really. So, yeah.
And how do you facilitate this exactly?
Well, so I'm a coach and I'm a speaker and I'm an author and I'm a Morris dancer, and the Morris dancing probably doesn't have that much to do with it. So mostly, it's working one-to-one with people, really getting deeply into their ingrained beliefs about alcohol. That's what I absolutely love doing. But more and more of our work comes with businesses and organizations to help them to add alcohol awareness as really a strand of their kind of well-being program, because far too many of them are spending a lot of money on well-being, and it's not really having the desired effect because they've not got an alcohol component to it. And yoga's great, blackout blinds are great, fitness trackers are great, but not if you're drinking 2 bottles of wine a day.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. So my background's in the health industry, so I think we spoke about this last time, and Bachelor of Health Science, and then exercise sports science, and I grew up being a PT from the age of 19, 20. And, it was one of the first things I ever saw was one of the biggest lessons I got from that was you don't change until you actually do. I think a lot of us think that, at a certain age, like maybe 30, 35, 40, we're just going to become the person we always wanted to become. But that actually happens in the present moment, and actually taking that step to move forward. I feel like that's quite an important, that's an important lesson to see. But, for a long time, I was actually, I don't know if you're the same, but when I grew up, I was pretty strict with my ideals about myself. I didn't drink at all when I was younger. I didn't do drugs when I was younger. I'm talking about before 18, and I had a pretty strict concept of even, wanting to have one girlfriend and all these ideals. Is that something similar that you shared as well prior to being, I guess, 18, before becoming social?
Oh, no. I mean, part of me really genuinely wishes that I had, because now I understand the research, and I understand that giving children alcohol is just about the worst idea ever. Yeah. Putting any kind of psychoactive drug into developing brains is just rolling the dice and hoping for the best. Add to that any kind of social anxiety or unprocessed trauma or identity issues or anything like that with early exposure to alcohol, and you're just set yourself up for a problem. So, for me, my parents thought they were encouraging me to drink responsibly by allowing me to have a small drink with dinner, from quite an early age, before teenage years.
Right.
And then when I hit the teenage years, it was just like, woohoo. I thought all of my Christmases had come at once. I thought alcohol filled in the gaps in my personality. I thought it made it easier for me to socialize. I thought it helped me find my place in life. I even thought it made the girls think I was more attractive. I have since come to realize that I was quite wrong about all of that, particularly the attractive bit.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I was speaking to a friend recently about how it's actually, I find it easier to talk to girls now that I'm sober, because when I'm out sober, you're kind of competing with guys that are drunk. And, so you've already got an edge there if you have the confidence to go and talk to them, because you can keep up conversation, you can seem smarter, all these sort of things. And I was like, it's actually a little bit easier, but there is an image around, if you're not drinking on a night out, you don't seem like you're quite a fun person. You seem kind of rigid and boring, and people don't give you enough time either. So that's also on the flip side of that. But I do want to talk a bit more about your story, and I guess before we jump into how you help people with their story, I'd like to know a bit more about yours and your relationship with alcohol early in life, and then we can kind of bounce back, and I can show you my story as well, because I have a similar. Well, I don't drink anymore. I did drink I've been restless I'm 28 now. So the last 4 years, it's been like no drinking for the year, one drink here, getting drunk 6 times a year, like slowly coming off it and out of it. But yeah, I'd like to hear more about your journey there.
Yeah, and then we'll tell the listeners about the Union of Sober podcast hosts that we're.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that was a good idea. I'm keen to share that.
So, as I said, I started drinking when I was a teenager, and it was very much about socializing. I was always going out, having fun, trying to persuade women that I actually had a shower. And, it started off lots of people, not that much drinking. But as the years went by, the amount of alcohol increased and the amount of people decreased. And it reached its logical conclusion when I was just sat at home drinking a couple of bottles of wine on my own. And, all of those kind of what I thought were the advantages of it, they slowly became revealed to be, massive disadvantages. In fact, I really believed alcohol made me more of a man, but the exact opposite was true. And I did all of the research about dating and relationships and things like that on Google, obviously. And what I found was that Google recommends that if you want to meet a partner, you want to be kind, you want to be funny, you want to be generous. And I kind of look at the way I was when I was drinking. Was I kind? No, not really. All I cared about was my next drink. Was I funny? Yes, in the sense that I was an object of ridicule. But were my jokes funny? No, I just thought they were funny. So, it made me the exact opposite of what I wanted to be. And in terms of generosity, honesty, did I ever tell the truth about alcohol? No, not really. So, it began to dawn on me that actually what I thought it was giving me was what it was taking away from me.
Yeah, and how long was that relationship with alcohol in that kind of context?
So I would say it was about 20 years. It was long enough.
Okay. And what was the turning point? What was was there a moment in time that kind of shifted?
Oh, what you mean that point in life when I was staring into the mirror at 4 a.m. and it was really moodily lit and the music kind of came up? Yeah,
that one. Yeah.
I always joke about that, but genuinely there wasn't one single point because, in my opinion, life doesn't work like that. Autobiographies work like that, movies work like that, but life is much more about gradual changes, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for me, I think that the thing that kicked it off was I met this amazing woman. I mean, she was a bit weird. She liked chickpeas and yoga, and she didn't drink, but she was quite amazing in other ways. So we got into a bit of a relationship, and she kind of sort of gently pointed me in the right direction. And that sort of started a chain of events. So I stopped smoking, I stopped taking drugs, I stopped drinking, I stopped eating junk food. But I did not do it in one blinding flash at 4 a.m. I did it over the course of sort of 5 years.
Yeah. It's a struggle. It's a wrestle. Like and that's what I said. Like the last 4 years as well. Even though I've been better than what I was prior to that, there are still moments, and you're kind of always kind of close to tipping over for a little while until you have that trust with yourself again. Because I think a lot of us, including myself, like I remember when I was probably 21, and I remember telling my friend, like, I'm done. The nights you come home, you're like, I'm done drinking. And then
I did that. I did that every day for about 10 years.
Yeah, everyone's saying that. You're like, okay. And then my friend's like, yeah, okay, man. Like you say that, but I'm like, no, I know I can stop. And there was this part of me that's very stubborn. And I was like, I know I can, but I guess I just didn't really want to at the time. But like you said, it's not really a gradual. It's not really a one-time thing. It's a gradual thing. Mine was a little movie-like in terms of there was a pivotal moment where I really shifted and changed. And I can share that with you as well if you like.
Yeah.
So again, similar to yourself, man. Actually, I had a crush on this girl that I used to work with. She used to work at the bar. So okay, here you go. I was a bartender at the time too. So I was well into the drinking game at this point. And there was a girl who used to work at the bar down the road. and it was owned by the same people. So after work, we'd kind of all get together, we'd hang out, we'd drink and stuff like that. And also to impress her and to be cool, I'd drink as well. But, I was drinking before I even met her. But that was just a general thing. I was doing that in a lot of scenarios. But, we became really good friends, like best friends. And I was like trying to pursue her as my girlfriend for quite a while. I've always wanted to go to Machu Picchu. Because before I started my business in coaching, I wanted to go to Machu Picchu and just do the hike and just have that kind of spiritual, or just that traveling sort of like, that it's done. I've actually done something that I wanted to do before I started my business and commit to it 100%. And so I invited a couple of my friends with me. No one wanted to come. I ended up inviting her, and she said yes. I was like really pumped to go overseas with her. And so prior to that, I actually asked her out, so I could get an idea if we got boyfriend, girlfriend, or what are we overseas? Because then it's different when you're there. And she said no. So I got rejected. And that stung. That really stung. And then some time passed by. I went overseas with my dad a little earlier. I came back for a week or two. And then on the plane trip there, she ended up telling me that she did want a relationship. And by the way, our first stop was in Mexico because the flights don't go straight to Peru. So we were actually going to Mexico for spring break. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, oh, God, she wants to be my girlfriend now. I was like, I was in my head, I was like, hell yeah, But I was also like, shit, we're going to spring break. So I better make sure this is a thing. We get there and, we jump off the plane. We decide, okay, let's actually have a talk about it when we get back to the hotel room. And so, yeah, we're off the plane. We bump into a bunch of guys that are from Sydney as well. So I'm also from Sydney. Like, what are the odds? They're on the same plane as us. We're like, oh, do you want to catch up? Like, no, sorry, man. We're going to head back to our hotel. Which hotel are you staying at? It's like, oh, same hotel. Like, we might as well hang out. So then we all went out together. Like, oh, you guys should join for drinks and come to dinner. And at this point in my life, I guess the lesson was like, I was such a go with the flow kind of person. I never really said no. And I think that's also part of drinking. Sometimes you keep saying yes because you don't want the fun to stop. You don't want to be that person that's like leading the crowd out somewhere else or just ditching the group or whatever it is. You might have different priorities and stuff. And so that was another lesson in the background. But, I ended up just going along with this thing. So I never had the chance to talk to her about it and like actually make it official or clear things up. And so went out for drinks. We got really drunk. I went to the bathroom and come back and one of the guys is sitting next to her. And I was like a little envious and stuff at that point. I was like quite jealous. And then, I was like, just keep drinking on spring break, have fun, stay one. And then I got so drunk, man, that I completely blacked out. We went to a party afterwards. Apparently I left her by herself on her own for 2 hours. I came back. Like I woke up the next morning. I remember a thing. My wristband was gone. I lost my phone, lost my wallet. And I was like, oh, I think I've been like spiked. She's like, what the hell? I can't believe you forgot about all that. And just like completely just was like wanting to go back home. And so I felt like a real terrible friend, let alone I was trying to make this girl my girlfriend. And so I was like, because I wasn't actually being my authentic self, I didn't want to do what I wanted to do in that moment. And I kept letting things kind of like just pass on. I'm never really the person that wanted to drink. I always had this other view of myself. And, but similar, like you said, I used to use it to boost my confidence and to talk to people and to do all that stuff. But you then realize that's not actually who you are. You are that without that stuff, as we mentioned in our previous conversation. And then, day 2 comes around. I walk outside to see what she's doing. We're on the ground floor. And she is on the phone to her mum, telling her mum that she wants to come back home pretty much. She's about to tell her why and all this stuff. I walk outside just as she's about to say it. And then she freaks out, falls off the balcony and breaks her ankle. And there goes the trip. There goes the hike. I'm like, oh shit, I can't do this thing. So I was like, I have a choice. Do I continue with this hike? Do I stay with her? So I ended up wheelchairing her around for the next week or so. She's on crutches and shit, and I pretty much couldn't leave her. And so my job at that moment was like, man, just be a good friend. I had no intention to kind of even make her my girlfriend at the point. Just said be your authentic self. You're here, and that trip was meant to be a very spiritual, evolutional kind of change. And it was just not the way I actually imagined it. And so I came back. I had another scenario like that. So it wasn't just that one thing. I came back. I drank again, and I disappointed my sister in how I was acting as well. And then I thought, you know what, man, I'm hurting the people closest to me. the girl that I wanted to be with and my sister. And I thought, man, like, I don't like the person who I am when I'm drunk. And even though I enjoy being drunk, I can't control what kind of happens as much. And so that was like this turning point. I also listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson podcasts about becoming a man, which is quite, I guess, which relates kind of to your book, which is about real men don't drink. Is that what's what it's like? It's
called Real Men Quit. You've got to get it in as few words as possible.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, so that was my story and how I kind of stopped drinking, or had the desire to stop completely, and kind of worked through that till now, to this point. And I feel a lot more like myself, and there's a stronger relationship there. So, yeah, man. So I'd like to hear more about, I guess, that for you with your clients, but also this book, and what's the message or the theme that's kind of been in the back of your mind, but maybe also your clients' minds. Like, what's the story behind that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you've really identified something very important about alcohol, and that is namely that it makes you act in a way that you don't really want to act. And you can go into the neurobiology of that. You know, you can get quite boring about how it affects the connection between the striatum and the prefrontal cortex, but kind of who cares? You know, we all know that that's what it does. We all know once we've had a couple of drinks, the self-control slides, and we end up doing stupid things. But I think what you did was really, you got right down to that fundamental question, you know, is alcohol helping me to achieve the kind of things that I want to achieve? And so few people actually ask that question. So few people are even aware of the fact that there are a lot of beliefs that sit underneath their behavior. So, and even less people are aware that those beliefs sit under the behavior of drinking. And, you know, the fact that your beliefs correlate to the amount you drink, you know, that's not my belief. That's what the research says. And what I try to do with people is, you know, I try to get them to, first off, just bring those beliefs into the light, actually examine them, you know, ask yourself, is what you believe about alcohol true? You know, does it actually help you to socialize? Does it lead to these amazing nights? Or does it lead to these nights where you black out, lose your phone, lose your watch, you know, wake up in the morning full of regret, people hate you, you've let down the people you love? You know, that's not in the adverts, is it? The adverts are all bikinis, good-looking girls, and bottles of beautiful-looking alcohol. But the reality is very different. And yet we believe the adverts because we want to believe the adverts. So it's about kind of bringing that all into the light, examining it. Is it true? But more importantly, is it serving you? Is it helping you become the person you want to be? You know, is it moving you forward, or is it actually taking you in the other direction?
Yeah. And so you talk about beliefs. So what kind of beliefs are lying underneath people's relationship to alcohol? And like maybe like top 3, or what are your most common ones you find?
Oh, I could get it into maybe the top 30. So, I mean, socializing is enormously important. A lot of people believe that they are incapable of socializing without alcohol. And you can kind of see why that is. You know, name a celebration which doesn't involve alcohol. Generally you can't, because actually even a lot of children's parties these days have alcohol at them. I mean, obviously not for the children, but my daughter's 7. I get invited to these things, and sometimes they're like, oh, well, you know, you can drop her off, or you can hang around and we can have a glass of Prosecco. And it's like, great, you've hijacked your kid's party, and you're teaching them a lesson, and that lesson is that adults always celebrate with alcohol. And you know, pretty much from birth to death, every celebration we go to, there's some alcohol at. So you know, that's a massive thing. The idea of dealing with stress, that is a huge one. I get a lot of people, they don't think they're able to relax or to calm down, you know, or to deal with the day, or to make their life work without alcohol. That's another huge one. I mean, you know, sex and attracting people of the opposite sex, there's a huge bunch of baggage about that. But then, I mean, they can be specific and very, very niche. And, I've worked with people who have certain mental health conditions, and they believe that they're medicating themselves with alcohol and that it's helping those mental health conditions. I, generally tend to inquire what their doctor would say about that. And they usually respond with, "Oh, my doctor told me I should stop drinking." And it's like, oh, that's amazing, isn't it? The person who's been to medical school, they've told you not to do it, yet you still believe it's providing you with some medicinal aspect.
Do you think that's like common knowledge though? You think that's something we choose to ignore as a society?
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Did you know that alcohol causes cancer?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like, it's not, but I don't say I can know it. Like, it's like, but let's say, do I believe there's a correlation between those two things? Right. Then yes.
If I said to you, do you believe smoking causes cancer? What would you say?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd say hell yes, wouldn't you? Because that's burnt into our minds, isn't it? We know that smoking causes cancer. The link between smoking and lung cancer dates back to the 50s. The link between alcohol and cancer dates back to the 80s. So it's not quite as old, but it's still, it was before you were born, right?
Yeah, exactly. But my question there would be like, why is cancer, like, okay, because the idea there is that like alcohol affects your health, like as in it gives you cancer and it shortens your lifespan. But that's essentially what we're trying to say underneath that web. So it's not like I don't know that if it gives me cancer or not, but I'm pretty aware of the fact that drinking alcohol will shorten my life expectancy and ruin my quality of life, regardless of like my knowledge behind it. I feel like it's quite common to draw that together. So obviously it's something deeper than like we know these things. So what is it about what do you think it is that like people are okay with foregoing that kind of risk and knowing that risk is there? So there's a different, is there a stronger value behind alcohol than I said life expectancy? Like they want to have more fun. Is a more fun life more valuable than a long life? Like what is it behind that?
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right that what is important is not whether you get cancer in 30 years or not. Nobody really cares about that. The reason why I pick on cancer is because it's like, it's not a contested thing. It's a scientific fact. Alcohol is classified by the World Health Organization in the same bracket as plutonium, cigarettes, and asbestos. Yet that is not widely known. And I think people, they're dimly aware that there is a health impact of alcohol, but they don't really understand the full weight of the mass of detrimental things that alcohol does to you, and B, they're not really aware of the levels at which it becomes a problem. So most people think that there are problem drinkers. They're the ones who drink too much and they're ruining the party for everybody else, but they're a small amount of people. And actually most people have this great relationship with alcohol and they have no problems at all. They're not really risking themselves at all. The word moderate drinker means something completely different to most people. To me, I think if you want to drink at a moderate, low risk way, you'd be drinking maybe 5 or 6 drinks a week, absolute maximum, and you'd be having weeks off every month, not days off every week, whereas a lot of people think moderate drinking is actually, I only had
1 a day, 2 a day.
So I think that the actual weight of the risk and where the risk kicks in are not well understood, but those aren't even the long-term health thing. That's not even the good news. The good news is if you cut alcohol out of your life, you will have more energy, you will have more focus, your mood will improve, your sex life will improve, you'll have more drive, you'll have more time, and all of your friends will be good looking. All right, I lied about the last one, but
you put yourself in a box there, myself included.
Well, yeah, we are very good looking.
Yeah, I mean, we scrap up, all right?
Audio only, so we can pretend.
Yeah. But then I think you're right, and the people don't understand the weight. But then there's so many questions behind that too. Like I get it that we're not very educated on that, and there's a lack of education around that. But then you could also say there's a lack of desire to understand the impacts of what you're putting into your body. So like and it goes for so many things. And I definitely empathize and sympathize with that, because, even water is quite a big thing too. Like the quality of water that you have coming from the tap, from spring, but there's so many things to question out there. The times you kind of go through it all. And so I guess this is why this podcast exists and why people like yourself are doing the work that you're doing. So we're all kind of contributing to the different pieces of the puzzle to create a healthier and better lifestyle and more love for ourselves and for the world. But it still begs the question, like, what is it? Why don't we inquire more about these things that we know cause us harm?
So I mean that is a really good question. I think it kind of gets to the heart of some of the problems. One of them is that the alcohol is very prominently featured in the media, usually in a fairly subtle but positive way. So if you look at any of the dramas, and we've done quite a bit of research around Netflix, of the Netflix original shows branded 15 and 18 that we studied, 85.6% of them have got alcohol featured in them. So that's the majority of them feature alcohol, and they usually associate it with confidence and power and masculinity, or sophistication and good looks and celebration and femininity. So there's a lot of it, the way it's portrayed in quite a subtle way. If you look at the way it's portrayed in, the kind of news media, they often try and eke out some kind of advantage to it. So they still bang the drum about how it's got antioxidants in it. Yeah, it's got antioxidants in it. It's a small amount of antioxidants, a ton of pro-oxidants. Yeah, brilliant. Not actually a health beverage. And you've got to ask, why is it? Why do creative people always feature alcohol? Why do journalists often talk about the benefits of alcohol? In my opinion, it's not some big conspiracy theory. It's not even the fact that the advertisers, a lot of the revenue comes from alcohol advertising. It's not even that. It's just the fact that most journalists drink heavily. Most creative people drink heavily. And what they want to believe is that alcohol is fine and it is not causing them any problems. They desperately, desperately want to believe that. They're clinging to that. Part of them knows that it's causing them problems, but part of them wants to cling to this idea that actually they're getting a great benefit, they're getting a great pleasure from drinking. And, I'm sure your listeners are sophisticated enough to have spotted that that's going to create a massive amount of cognitive dissonance, a massive amount of discomfort, because they've got, on the one hand, this belief in its positivity, and on the other hand, this belief in its negativity. So you just kind of have to ramp up the positive. You just have to tell anyone who will listen how great it is. And look, I did that for 20 years. Everybody I've pretty much ever met, they will start off telling me all of the amazing things that alcohol does for them, and I listen very patiently, and I nod, and I make some notes, and then we go back through them, and we really talk about it, and we really unpack it, and then they start to see that that is all an illusion.
And so what's behind it? What's behind the illusion?
Behind the curtain is the Wizard of Oz.
And what's behind?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, we live in this system that reinforces the idea that drinking is normal and sobriety is weird. Anybody who has an orange juice at a party, there's something wrong with them. Don't trust him. He doesn't drink. So there's this massive weight within the system. And then there's the tricks that our own minds play on us, focusing on all of the good stuff. So if you look at socializing, for example, people always say, oh yeah, well the alcohol really helps me to socialize. And it's like, well, how do you know that? How do you know that is true? And if we actually sit there and break down the elements of socializing. So let's say I go out for a drink with Dave. I'll pick on Dave this time. And Dave has a drink and I don't have a drink. What am I doing? Let's say it's Friday, so I've finished all my work for the week. I'm out, a nice place. I've got a nice alcohol-free option to drink. I'm with all of our friends. We're having fun. It's relaxed. It's a nice evening, isn't it? That is a lot of positive stuff. That's why I am enjoying myself. Dave is getting all of that, and he's drinking as well. So you've got to tease it out. You've got to say, well, what is the alcohol actually actually adding? How is
Mm.
that making the situation better? And until you can prove to me that there is some genuine benefit that you get from drinking, then I'm going to remain cynical about that. I'm going to tell you that what you're enjoying is the event. You're just giving the power to alcohol.
Yeah, I understand. And I had a pretty, when I was working in the bar, I was watching Peaky Blinders quite a bit, and man, I was obsessed. I think a lot of guys were obsessed with Thomas Shelby and the the way he holds a cigarette and smoke, and then you have the scotch, and he used to have this bar and stuff as well. And it is cool, and you have this like masculine sort of trait behind it. So I think you're right. I think there is like something to do like archetypally, like an archetypal kind of character that we've created that you can become by having alcohol, and I think it's quite attractive. And but there are a lot of I guess social issues and world, like across the world, like there is an issue with people being able to socialize mainly because of social media. Us spending time behind the computer more, the way we do our work, we're quite secluded now. Like if you're running your own business, and even if you're trying to run your own business and you're breaking away from the norm, it's quite a lonely path as well, because you're trying to be entrepreneurial, and you don't have much resources to begin with, and so you have to do everything yourself. And so you might not be drinking as much as other people that are in the 9 to 5 because they're working with people and then they're part of the tradition, but then you're limiting your social behavior. And so then you feel like you need to be a part of something when you go out, and maybe you get really drunk when you go out because you feel like you need to be part of the community again. And so I think there is a lack of sociability. I think people don't have the sort of skills to actually approach people and talk, especially in Australia. I don't know what it's like in the UK. But we're quite a very reserved country over here. We have it's called like a nanny state. And so it does allow people to kind of converse more and talk more. And I believe that actually truthfully is a benefit to it behind socializing. I don't think you need it to socialize, but I think most people, or majority of people, do have an issue socializing. And so they need a solution to that. So whether that's some other kind of program or another event, or like something that's, people that start running events that are sober events, but there is a need there. And I think that alcohol kind of fits that need. And so it's about replacing that. And so have you found something that's replaced the need for alcohol in order to help people socialize more?
Yeah, so I would give you the example, and I think it's quite opposite if you're talking about business people, think about networking, because most networking events that I go to, a lot of them happen in the morning. Most of them happen during the working day. They're not events that typically involve alcohol. And in fact, a lot of the sober superstars that I've interviewed, part of the reason why they got into business was because there is a lot of socializing that doesn't revolve around alcohol.
Right. So when you say business, do you mean entrepreneurship, or do you mean like working for a corporate?
Yeah, entrepreneurs starting their own businesses. Yeah. And what they've found is a community of people who may well drink when they go home, but at the events that they're at, there is no drinking, and everybody finds a way to socialize at those events, don't they? And I went to one of these networking events. I don't particularly like networking. I mean, it's incredibly important, and partnership is absolutely everything. Don't get me wrong, but who enjoys them? It's like they are a little bit annoying. And I kind of turned up and I walked through the door, and there were a couple of people I knew in the room, but they were talking. And the way sometimes people are talking and they're close together, they're obviously having that conversation. They don't want to be disturbed. I'm looking around the room, and there doesn't seem to be anybody who I can just go up to and say hello to. So I went and made a cup of tea, and I sort of started to sip my tea slowly. And, I found that the nerves sort of they disappeared a little bit. And then after a while, after I'd had a little bit of my tea, it seemed like, oh, there we go. There's an opening. I'll go and talk to those people. Now, I think anybody would just laugh at you if you said tea helps you to socialize. But if you tell that story and you use the word alcohol, then everybody will just go, oh, yeah, of course, the drink helps you to socialize. it helped to calm your nerves. It helped you to
Mm.
fit in. But it had nothing to do with what I was drinking. And it had everything to do with the fact that that's just what human beings do. They walk through a door to an unfamiliar situation, and the whole kind of like, the whole kind of basic living in the prairies back in the day, kind of your old brain kicks in and it goes, right, this is a life or death situation. Let's be scared. If people don't like us, we're going to be, humiliated and driven out of the tribe, and then we'll starve to death slowly, and that won't be any fun. That's what your brain does. I mean, it's totally irrational, but that's what it does when it walks into a room full of people you don't know. So you are kind of nervous to start off with. Everybody is at the start of social situations, even if you know people there and you know them quite well. You get these nerves. But what you'll find is after, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, they start to dissipate. They start to disappear. You start to feel more relaxed. And that just happens. But what we do is we turn up, we are nervous, we have a drink, we start to feel better, and we assume it was the alcohol that had the effect. But it can't have been the alcohol that had the effect. I mean, alcohol doesn't really act that quickly. It takes time to get through your system.
Yeah. It's so right, because it's like this. There is this image, like you don't want to be caught out in public not doing something. Like the amount of times like I'll just look at my phone so it looks like I'm doing something. Like because it just to sit down and have a coffee and not do anything. People are like, what's this guy doing? Just sitting down and having a coffee, like, and like, where do you look? Like, don't look at someone else. Like, look at across the table and look at some person in the eyes. Look at the person at the counter. Like, you need to look at something so you're not like this weird person sitting around. So I think there's something with that in terms of being out in a social place, like having the drink of alcohol. You go there, your attention's on something. It looks like you're actually engaged. But you're right about having a substitute like tea. Like I went out a couple of nights and I would have some tea at some parties and stuff like that, just to kind of stay awake too. Because I would find it quite hard to stay engaged later than everyone else would too. But it's definitely that element to it. So I agree with what you're saying in terms of it's not the alcohol that it's
just about my favorite piece of research in the alcohol industry is some stuff around alcohol as a placebo. And, I'm sure your listeners are sophisticated enough to know what a placebo is. If you give somebody a sugar pill, tell them it's a paracetamol, their headache goes away. And conversely, if you give them a paracetamol and tell them it's a sugar pill, their headache doesn't go away. So if you get a group of people and you stick them in exactly the same situation and you split them in half and you give one group of them orange juice and one group of them vodka and orange, and ask them to fill out surveys every 30 minutes, because that's the way to have an amazing party, by the way. Get everyone to fill out a survey every 30 minutes. They will report exactly the same feelings up until about the third or the fourth drink, when they will start to notice that they aren't drinking alcohol. So the effects that you get from drinking those first few drinks, it is all about what you believe about alcohol, and the situation you are in. It has got nothing to actually do with the chemical. And the interesting thing is, once you get over those 3 or 4 drinks, once you're actually able to notice that you're drinking alcohol, that is when the harm kicks in. That is when you are starting to really damage your body. So to get any noticeable effect from alcohol, it has to damage you. So to use it as intended, it has to be dangerous. It's much more like a gun than a drink.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I find that study really interesting. So I guess like what you could do if someone was here listening and they wanted to implement a sort of strategies when you rock up to this place, whether or not you are going to drink or not, have your first few drinks as, orange juice, some water, Sprite, soda water, and see how you feel after 20 to 30 minutes of being there. And if you feel like, I'm having fun without the alcohol, then you can kind of continue, and then you can kind of gauge where you're at with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why alcohol-free drinks are taking off so much. I mean, I don't know
that's such a big business, man. Yeah.
I don't know what the scene's like in Australia, but it's absolutely huge over here. We've got loads of great people providing, really interesting, grown-up, tasty alternatives. And I think one of the reasons why they're so effective is you don't notice that you're not drinking. And if you believe that you're not going to have fun, unless you are drinking, then you either need to get to grips with those beliefs and change those beliefs, or you need to fool your brain into believing that you are drinking alcohol, and then your brain will react the way it always does. If you've got a beer in your hand, you'll just be having fun like normal. It doesn't matter whether it's an alcohol-free beer or not.
Yeah, it's the same thing with cigarettes. It's like just having the action of doing something. It's the actual like smoking it and putting it down, lighting it up, and then going out socializing with someone else. It's just, we do want to be socials. We want to find ways of making interactions easier and seamless. And I think that's what people are trying to do when they are drinking or smoking and engaging these sort of substances. But I'd like to ask you more about your book, because I'm curious about Real Men Quit. And so why you called it why Real Men, and what's the philosophy behind that? And tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I called it Real Men Quit because I wanted to, get it kind of in your face. I wanted to be a bit controversial about it. I mean, I think there genuinely is this kind of like perceived idea that real men drink. The examples abound. I talk a lot about sports people. Now, I'm not as familiar with Australian rugby as I am with English rugby. And I'm not enormously familiar with English rugby, but your listeners have probably heard of a guy called Johnny Wilkinson who won the World Cup. Yeah. He also won 2 Heineken Cups. He played in the Guinness Six Nations, yet he doesn't drink. He's never drank. He was teetotal throughout his career. And part of his success is down to the fact that he's not regularly poisoning his body. As an exercise physiologist, you are going to be more than aware of the impact that alcohol has on sporting performance. But a lot of people aren't. So they don't kind of know that a lot of the elite sports people these days don't drink. So Tom Brady, the most successful American football player, he doesn't drink. Novak Djokovic, most successful tennis player, he doesn't drink. Floyd Mayweather, arguably the most successful boxer ever, doesn't drink. Cristiano Ronaldo, unquestionably the prettiest footballer in the history of football. He doesn't drink.
Do you reckon it's natural? I think he's had some enhanced, but look, he's regardless.
That dude works hard on everything he does,
man. He's incredible.
Whether that's his free kicks or his moisturizing regime, that dude works so hard. But you know what? He's been playing top flight football for knocking on for 20 years. Is
that how long it is?
That is impressive.
20 years.
That is impressive. And part of his longevity is the fact that he's taking care of his body.
It's incredible.
Part of that taking care of the body is not putting poison into it. So he doesn't drink. Lots of sports people don't drink. Surprisingly large amount of rugby players don't drink. Yet sport is so incredibly connected with alcohol because drinking. All the big sporting companies, they sponsor all the big drinks companies sponsor sporting events. Now, you could say, well, obviously they sponsor rugby. They're trying to advertise to men and men watch rugby. But the fact is they're trying to kind of like jump on the back of all of the positive qualities that rugby players have, strength, power, discipline, downright manliness. That's what they're trying to hijack. Very little alcohol or no alcohol at all goes into sporting success, yet it is used as a vehicle to advertise alcohol. And there is a huge irony in that. And that was the kind of thing that I was trying to get to grips with, to help people to see the truth behind, the environment that they live in, to start to unpick their beliefs around alcohol, to realize that, all of these real proper professional hardcore successful rugby players, they're not out drinking 18 pints after the match. That's just the way the amateurs roll. And to really understand the difference, so it's all about getting to grips with your beliefs at the end of the day. There's a little bit about thought management in there. So, you could call it cravings, you could call it thoughts, whatever you're happy with, but it just gives you some skills, some tools, some tricks to help you get through that thought process of wanting a drink when you're not going to have one. And then it also covers a little bit about what you might choose to do once you stop drinking. But that is a huge area, and it can only kind of give you a little bit of a pointer on that.
Yeah, man, I think that's very well said. And Yeah, I really agree with that. Firstly, yeah, I think that becoming a real man, and not a real man to put in a very toxic way, but in terms of like inspiring, heroic, um, you take care of others, you take care of yourself. You're a leader. Let's put it as leadership. I think if you want to really step into that role, which I think a lot of men do, I think we're kind of craving that as well. And there's so many facets. There's just like one, building trust with yourself. Do you actually trust your word? Your word as a man, your word as a person. Can I say something, and does that thing actually happen? Does that actually manifest? And do my words have value? And do they have strength and integrity? That's a big thing, especially for me, and especially for I think anyone in sportsmanship, or anyone that's in that position to lead people, and you're going to have that quality of yourself. And if you want to get to that point, which is becoming a man or becoming of higher status, then you're going to have that characteristic and that attribute about yourself. And so alcohol is a very, very good way to tap into that. I've personally felt a lot, I've gotten like highs of saying no. Like it gets to the point where I enjoy saying no, because every time I say no, it's like I'm passing this test, and it's now strengthening me as well. And I think I maybe feel the same way. And a lot of people that maybe have stopped are probably at this point now as well, where it's like it's actually your strength. And I don't want to sound like I'm condescending people either, because it is a tough journey, and I understand that. But there is a place you can get to where you have this relationship with yourself, where you just love yourself more, and you trust yourself a lot more. And because you're not attributing all the things that you thought was alcohol, your sociability, the control of yourself, all these things that you thought alcohol provided you with, and now you're doing that on your own without alcohol. Well, now you have this immense amount of power behind you, this immense amount of strength behind you, and this gift. And you're right. I think to get to the top level of anything, you're going to need that discipline too. And so alcohol can be a great teacher. If you just focused on, the food's another thing that I attribute this to as well. Like what kind of foods you're eating and what are you putting into your body. We can put that into one category, but we could separate that and make it a bit more simpler and just focus on alcohol. And the word alcohol, we spoke about this last time too, alcohol actually draws things out. Like, it removes stains. And so it removes the presence of something. So to remove the essence. And so if you want to be present, you want to be more alive, you want to live fully, then alcohol does the opposite of that and removes that part of you, removes that spirit out of you as well. The thing that you thought, and also like that's what's funny is it's called spirits. Like it's there is something to do with the spiritual realm and archetypal stuff and gods entering your body. Like I truly see everything as a god in some way. So anything I'm a servant to could be a form of a god. So because it's not alcohol, it's the idea of it, right? It's the confidence you get, it's the sociability, it's the funniness, it's the attractiveness, it's the ability to talk to God, whatever it is, all those things that come with alcohol, the stress. That is a kind of character that you formulate in your head. It's an ideal, and you're a servant to that character, which is you're a servant to that God. And so everything you do, you're kind of a slave or a servant to, until you claim that for yourself as well. And so I really like the name of your book. I know it is contradictive and it grabs your attention, but it's great, because that's what we kind of need to do with this subject, is we need to wake people up, and we need to tell a new story behind what becoming a man is, what becoming a woman is, and what becoming responsible is, and actually fulfilling your potential. Because working in the PT industry and health industry, pretty much everyone says, I just want to look good, feel good. And I want to discover, if I say, what's your vision? I want to discover my greatest potential. Okay, great. Then that's exactly the steps to take in order to fulfill that goal and fulfill that vision we have for yourself.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, there is literally so much in what you have just said. But one of the things that I really wanted to pick up on is something that I think is really it's been game changing for me, and I kind of realized it in retrospect when I got into the works of a guy called Mark Lewis, who I like to think of as a rock and roll neurologist. So he had a big problem with drink and drugs, sorted himself out, went to university and then became a neurologist. So he kind of gets it from both perspectives. He's got the lived experience, but he's also got the science chops to back it up. And he sort of like talks a lot about, there's this bit of your brain called the striatum. It's got the nuclear accumbens in it, and that's the bit that really reacts to dopamine. That's the bit of your brain that's really kind of like focused on booze and sex and McDonald's. And then there's another bit of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is often sort of like referred to as the bridge of the Starship Enterprise or the rider of the horse or whatever. It's the bit of your brain that actually makes the decisions, is capable of rational thought, is able to kind of really think things out. And what alcohol does is it weakens your connection. In fact, what any drugs do is it weakens your connection between the striatum and the nucleus accumbens, which makes you more kind of reactive, more driven by your passion, more just giving in, more like, well, sorry, I won't go to the gym, I'll have a McDonald's instead. You know, that is the upshot of weakening that connection. But the really interesting bit is when you stop drinking, when you stop taking the drugs, not only does that connection reestablish itself and strengthen itself, it actually gets stronger than it was before you started drinking. So actually a lot of people who come out the other side end up with more self-control, more discipline, stronger willpower. And that is why they often go on to achieve such epic success in the arts, politics, business, sports. You know, I give you an example. Like a friend of mine, Nick, is currently rowing the Atlantic. He's also climbed Everest. He's also walked to the South Pole. And he's done all of that in the last 6 years since getting sober. Would he have done that when he was drinking? No. He would have been sat on the couch, wouldn't he?
But like you said, I think that's the silver lining here, and that's the the golden egg for our listeners and for everyone out there, is like, you know, you will become stronger because you've gone through the process of drinking. Because I feel like if you didn't ever drink, you're doing it because you're a bit naive, but great, you've still got some level of control and everything. And there's a great, I'm not discrediting that, but there is this. You've gone through it, you've seen the benefit of it, and you've still now said no to it. And there is this greater sense of control, as you mentioned. And I think like that's with most things in life. You can look at, you know, the mistakes, the errors you've made, the wandering off the path as a way of strengthening yourself. And there's a really good book or concept called Anti-Fragile. And it talks about how people are anti-fragile and our neurosystem is actually anti-fragile, much like our bones as well. So, to clarify that, there are three types of things. So there are things that you break and they don't heal, right? In terms of when you hit it with force. There are things that when you hit them and it doesn't break. It doesn't break when it hits, but it stays the same. You know, you whack a stick into a wall and the stick just stays the same if it's a strong stick. But there are things that you can smack into something, it breaks and then grows back again stronger than what it was. And that's what the human body is like. And it's what the human mind is like as well. And we are perfectly designed to deal with increments of stress, like tiny increments of stress that put the body in this way. And so psychologically true, but also physiologically true, right? So if I want to grow my muscle, I tear it just enough that it can repair itself and gets bigger. And if I wanted to repair neurological damage or anxiety or PTSD, it's like you slowly increment someone back to small stresses of that thing that they're afraid of, but not too much that it completely shatters them and not too little that there's no change. And so there is this optimal version, there's this optimal place of stress that you can put on the body, and then you can heal and recover and become better than what you were beforehand. And so I guess the message within that is that it doesn't matter where you are right now, is you can take the steps and incrementally change and put yourself under like tough situations in order to grow and be better than what you were previously before these habits were there as well. So I think that's a great note.
Yeah, I that's the good news for me. You then sort of reinterpret the past, don't you? You see it in a different light, don't you? Because we're kind of apt to look back on all of the stupid things we've done and kind of beat ourselves up for it. And I'm not saying that I don't regret things that I've done, that I don't maybe wish that things had gone differently, that, I hadn't have done that. But I don't make it a big thing. I've now accepted that what happened in the past, they're not black marks that are burnt into my soul. They're not demerits or anything like that. They're signposts on a journey, and they pointed me in a particular direction. And if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have ended up here. And frankly, I'm quite enjoying talking to you. So, it's like,
thanks, Duncan. Likewise.
Yeah, there's literally no way I could have got to this point without screwing up all that stuff in the past.
Yeah.
So while, it's not really, completely 110% positive, woo, so glad I did that, it's about seeing it as a marker post on the journey, a step on the broken road. And, we've all done those stupid things, and being able to reinterpret them and see them in a different way as something absolutely that makes you stronger. I think that is so important for our own peace of mind, our own development. And, once you've got that level of self-awareness, yeah, what are you going to do? Who knows? Go write that symphony.
Well, I think you're right, man. I think it's also bringing love to the situation, and it's always a goal of mine. So it's like I could look at my past self and hate my past self and ignore that and ignore the fact that I did all those things when I was drinking, or I could actually, shake alcohol's hand and be like, thank you for providing me with that, that fun time in my life, for giving me the confidence in those times that I needed it, because it did provide you some sort of benefits at the time, and at least you perceived it that way at the time as well. So it did serve you, and there is a way to look at that and to look at yourself without feeling discouraged or shameful, because that's also a lower vibrational frequency, right? And that's a lot of things for me come under intention and frequency, and what are you doing this out of fear, love? Like, it's a bit black and white, but that is kind of true in terms of our thoughts and our actions. And so it's having compassion for ourselves as well. We'll wrap this up soon, if that's all right, Duncan. I don't know how much time I have of yours. I know you have to pick up your kids at school, but I did want to.
I'm going to drop them off, man.
Drop them off. Sorry, drop them off. I keep it. Yeah. It's 6:30 here, so I'm like, oh shit, he's got to go. But yeah, no, it's in the morning. Yeah. But I guess I do want to leave the listeners with some sort of clear path as well. So what kind of questions could they ask themselves? Can they reach out to you? Is there any sort of advice, and where should they go? And yeah, how could they get back on the right path?
Yeah, so I mean, if you are concerned about your drinking, just about the best thing you can do is get some clarity about, where you are at with that. Are you drinking at an acceptable level? Are you drinking at a severe level? Are you drinking at a flat out, do something now, dude, kind of a level? And that's why we've got a maybe drink a little less quiz. That's on my website. If you can spell Bassground Brown, then you're you're golden. It's really, really easy to find me. If you can't, there are two ways you can find me. You can put Real Men Quit into Amazon, and that will show you where my book is, and that will tell you how to spell my name. Or you can put getover.uk into the internet, and that will take you to a page on my website. At the top, there's a little link that says maybe drink a little, maybe drink less, I think it's titled. One of the bits at the top there. It's on the homepage. But on that page, getover.uk, you will find links to my last book, Get Over Indulgence. Your listeners can grab themselves a PDF copy or an EPUB, which is the Kindle version, and there's the audio one there. They can get started by listening to that. It's a little bit about my journey, a little bit more about the process of finding a way out of indulgence.
Oh, awesome. Some practical tools in there, I guess, to help navigate their way through that journey. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I mean that one's more a kind of like a little bit of a nudge to show you that change is possible, and it's quite funny, or at least I hope it's kind of funny. And it's also really, really short, which I think is the best thing about a book.
Yeah.
It doesn't take very long to read, and it's kind of enjoyable. But it will just, it will give you a bit of an understanding about how to change. But mostly, it's a way of showing you that change is possible, because you don't have to be trapped where you are. There is an alternative. There is a way out. And actually, I know, spend half an hour on Instagram or Facebook, and you will see a lot of people who have solved the problems that you have, and they're showing you the way forward.
Yeah, well said, man. I appreciate the work you're doing, and I think this is one of the biggest issues in society today. I think that, and I think money, and I think sometimes these can kind of be conflated too. But I think these are topics that we need to openly talk about more, share our story more as well, how we feel about alcohol. Everyone talks about it, everyone feels terrible about it, but I guess we're kind of all scared to disappoint others. And I think there's some form of good intention behind what we're doing here. But we have to be okay with letting others down in order for us to evolve and for us to become better and create better relationships in our family, but for our kids as well. And there's so many things that actually we kind of didn't cover, but one's kids and offspring, and actually the effect that drinking has on your offspring. And in terms of they have increased levels of aggression as well, decreased levels of sociability. So all these things, and then they're maybe dependent on alcohol too, and they're seeing you drink. So there's a whole bunch of things that I think we could kind of unpack here. So your work is highly, highly appreciated, and I would love to stay in touch a lot more and provide people with a little more help and provide you with a place to kind of share your story a bit more as well. So massive thanks to you, Duncan.
Well, thank you, man. I mean that's what it's all about. There is a lot of misery and suffering in the world. Some of it is caused by alcohol. Too much of it is caused by alcohol. And, honestly, you kind of mentioned money, and I think there is a big knock on, that obviously alcohol costs a lot of money. People waste a lot of money on alcohol. So it improves your financial life. Stop drinking. But actually, I think once you get used to delving into those beliefs about alcohol, you start to question stuff about, why do I believe this about money? It's one of the things that has happened to me recently. I've used the same kind of tools that I use to get free from alcohol to start to understand my relationship to money a little bit more.
Well, yeah, I think they're kind of in the same field, right? In terms of chakras, I like trying to bring in some sort of esoteric knowledge to it too, because sex, money, security come under one sort of umbrella of emotions in the body, and they're held in an energy pool as well. So there is something there that's kind of blocked or overusing it, and we need to raise our awareness, or I wouldn't even say awareness, but kind of raise our frequency and to challenge ourselves to think of things differently and to bring a different intention behind things, and possibly to even take a risk. I think it's actually the sense of security and lack of not being okay with the unknown, not being okay with letting go of control a bit, that we tend to dive into money and dive into alcohol. And it's a lot of fear around it, right? Like fear of what people think of you, there's a lot of fear around it. So again, it's in that kind of that field, that lower vibrational kind of thought field. And the first thing, by the way, that helps you with your health. So there's a chart that kind of ranks all the different frequencies based on the thought and emotion. And the first one that turns positive is courage. And then it goes like truth, acceptance, love, etc., gratitude. But everything below that, like shame, fear, guilt, is all detrimental to your health. And so it's even if you're doing things that have this sort of habit, it's about, can you change this and see it in a way where you have the courage to accept it and share it and be open about it too. So even just talking about it more is a great thing.
Yeah, I don't think it all starts with awareness. If you aren't even aware you have a problem, you're not going to solve it, are you? Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks, Duncan, for helping raise awareness to this issue, and to giving me your time as well, and the listeners some valuable content. There's a lot in that, a lot of gems in that, and so I'm kind of eager to unpack it.
Oh, thanks, man. I've enjoyed it. You're good fun to talk to.
Yeah, we're okay. We're okay. We'll have to have another conversation, a bit more. I think a bit more out there as well, not related to alcohol, but I feel like there's some other stuff that we could kind of cover, which would be interesting too. So I'm looking forward to those as well.
Yeah, well, I hope it comes across, but I quite like talking.
Oh man, I'm the same. I'm like, I could go another hour here. I'm just like Easily. That's what I'm like, for me, right? I was like, man, why aren't I podcasting? That's I was coaching for a long time, and coaching is actually listening. So I'm quite okay at listening too. I hope so, because that was my job for quite a while. But it made sense for me to step into more of a podcasting role, because I feel like maybe it's more impactful too, and I get to learn more as well. So as a coach, you kind of fit in a role where you're teaching and you're the expert in that field and you're helping, and that's okay. I think I'll come back to that eventually, but right now I feel like becoming more of a student and just listening to people like yourself and to others that have spent more time, so that I can kind of raise my own awareness and knowledge and not be too egotistical in my way and stuck in my way. So that's this year's goal for me.
Cool. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I was always very focused on kind of like reading books. That was what I learned from education, was that the way to acquire knowledge is to read books and do courses and stuff like that. And recently, and not just doing my own podcast, but some other things, I've been doing a lot of talking to other people and, using their knowledge as a kind of research base. And I realized, like, wow, you can learn so much just from talking to other people and kicking it around. And it gives you this kind of depth of understanding that you can't get from a book, because it does sort of like apply it a little bit more. And
still your own thoughts, right? You're still your own interpretation. So you're not really... you're still there's a bias a little bit. You can kind of read books that you want to read. Same, I could say things you want me to hear, but it's a little different. It is like, I have my own bias opinion and you have your own opinions. And so when they kind of meet together, new content and new information is created out of that. And I actually think that's how life works, and how information knowledge works, is by experience meeting, like physical meeting the spiritual, or it's male, masculine energy, female energy, but it's the collision of opposites, which are actually the same. And you see that they're the same by the outcome that they have. And that's the creation. By combining two forces together, you get a third. And I think that's where knowledge lies. And that's where the equilibrium lies between things too. Otherwise, you're just living in polar sides, and that's quite conflicting. And it's quite a hard way to live as well. It's a great thing to go out and converse. And so, again, people, go be social. There's another reason to go do it. You enhance your knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something that I kind of hit on towards the end of Real Men Quit. Just that you kind of like, we have these, what we perceive as masculine traits, and we have what we perceive as feminine traits. But actually, the truth lies in combining the two. And if you just stick over in, the area that is incredibly masculine, you end up as Darth Vader. What really is success is building together the masculine and feminine traits and becoming a bloody Jedi.
Yes. So you've done a lot of work in Star Wars. A lot of time researching this thing. That sounds like you've analyzed it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at sort of the idea of most stories, it's about the union of a man and a woman, or at least the union of masculine and feminine traits. Yeah. And that happens internally in every character, or at least it happens internally in every character that actually gets to live. The ones that just focus on either the masculine or the feminine characteristics and don't embrace what they lack, they end up like Darth Vader and they end up dead. Luke, he starts off with strength and power, and he starts off with order. What he lacks is feeling and understanding, and that is what the process of learning the Force is all about. That's what he gets from Obi-Wan. That's what he gets from Yoda. Is he learns to feel and understand, and he combines the masculine and feminine characteristics, becomes a much more complete person, goes off and saves the universe.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at that. I feel like story. Well, we spoke about this last time too. Is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And my belief is
George
that
Lucas was a fan, wasn't he?
Yeah. massive fan, man. Joseph Campbell is incredible. I think, and his work is based off Jung's work. So that's why a lot of archetypal stuff kind of comes out. But true for every single one of us, right, is that we have a mother and a father, and then we're created. So we are the combination of masculine and feminine, each and every single one of us. So people are like, how are we all the same? How do we all unite? It's like, well, because we are all actually the individual, which is the hero, which is the balance between order and chaos, the balance between masculine and feminine. And so in all of us actually is the ability to hold that paradoxical balance within ourselves. And yeah, you're 100% correct. And these characters and seeing, and that's what our lives are teaching of that. It's about finding that path. And so something I did want to mention was, I don't know if you know about this, but the word error, the etymology of the word error comes from the word to wander off the path. So, which kind of changed my perspective on error. So I was like, error isn't a mistake, like something you shouldn't do. It's actually you wandering off the path, but discovering, the opposite end of that and coming back to the center, or you can overcorrect too, and then you wander off again. And then life's this continuously wandering, but every time you wander, you're getting closer and closer to that point, and you realize all those mistakes along the way are samples and milestones and flags and everything you mentioned earlier to actually leading you to discovering yourself. And so that's that helped me so much with like the perspective of making mistakes, because, I've made a ton.
Well, I didn't know that nicely puts into light some of the things that I've done in my life where you kind of like, you think, well, that was a total waste of time. And then you kind of like, you really dig into it and you think, well, no, actually it wasn't a waste of time. At the very least, it just taught me that wasn't the right thing for me to do. So I'm not going to make that mistake again, am I, Yeah,
it's a bit shitty that we have to do that as humans. Like, we have to like actually go the other end and then test it out. And not, we can't just take secondhand knowledge sometimes. We have to go prove it and experience it ourselves. But there's a joy in that.
I used to do clinical training in the National Health Service, and we used to teach people to stick needles into other human beings, and naturally, some of them were quite nervous about it, and I was quite nervous about the ones that weren't nervous. But they would get a little bit hung up on it, and I'm like, well, they're like, what if I fail? I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you a 100% way. You're guaranteed never to fail. And they go, oh, yeah, great, Duncan. What's that? I'm like, just don't do it.
Yeah. And that's
like literally the only way to make sure you never fail is to 100%. Not bother.
It's just, that is the craziest thought, right? Like it's quite simple, but I use that and probably still use that for most things. But it started off with talking to girls. Because I think, same reason you start out drinking, same reason a lot of guys, whatever it is, it's because you're like, oh, I need to drink for it. But it's like, you know what? If you're never going to approach, like, it's already a no. You've already failed. You already don't have an experience with that person. You don't have a number. You don't have that job. Whatever it is, you've already lost. And so you can actually only win. That's it. You can actually only win by taking this leap. What's the only way you can win?
Was it Michael Jordan who made that point about how many free throws he's missed?
Shots.
And, all of that. Yeah. And it's like, well, yeah, of course. The definition of success is taking more shots. If you take more shots, you will miss more shots as well.
Yeah. So it's being okay looking like a fool. And that's also part and parcel of the hero archetype, because that's the opposite of the hero is the fool. But the fool is also the closest person to becoming the hero, because they've made the mistakes and they're the ones learning. And something interesting about Jung's work about the shadow is, and what I find is like all those parts of yourself that comes out through drinking or through, just your day-to-day life that you're unconscious of. It's the joker within you, the part of you that's making fun of yourself. But, people get angry at that and you get upset at that. But it's actually, you get to a point where it's like, actually, that thing's working for me and it actually loves me. And then the reason it's actually making fun of me. And same thing you do with your friends, right? You think about your best friends and your family, like you actually make a lot of fun of them when they do something wrong, because you have that relationship with them where you love them. So it's like, you're trying to make them aware of parts of themselves. And so as soon as you're the parts of themselves that your closest people make fun of you of, that's quite true. And so that's something fascinating to look at. It's like, actually, these people are probably right, and they're probably saying it because they're close with me and they love me and they want the best for me. So it's taking that humility. Yeah.
I was managing a team back in the day, and they were totally new to me. Didn't really know any of them, and it had been like a couple of weeks. And my boss said to me, like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "Well, they're starting to be rude about me, so I think it's going quite well." And she's just like looked at me like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, if they're comfortable enough with me to take the mick, then we're obviously getting on all right, aren't we?"
Yeah, that's a great measure. At the workplace, wherever you go, it is a symbol of like, can I make a joke with this person?
Yeah,
and then that's like,
if they didn't like me, they'd be really polite to me.
Yeah, I know. And it's strange. This why humans we are funny. Like, we are interesting, sort of like
endlessly
creatures.
Fascinating. Which is why we should do this again.
Yeah, let's do it, John. Maybe I'll jump on your podcast and we can dive deeper into.
We'll do that. We'll do that, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do that again.
We'll do that again.
Keep chatting till we run out.
We'll be professional tennis players on podcasting. That's it. You serve, then I serve next. All right, Duncan. It was a pleasure as always, man. So thanks again for your time.
I really enjoyed that. It was a good one.
You too, man. So have fun. Don't be late picking up the kids.
No,
is it kids or kid?
Kid,
one or two?
Just the one.
Kid, just the one. Girl?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, keep her off the booze.
Well, yeah. I'm gonna try. We'll see. It's like she's not allowed to drink alcohol until she's 25. That's not my opinion. That's the science. And she's not allowed to have a mobile phone until she's 40. That is my opinion.
There's other ways these days, though, man.
Oh, don't. I mean, like in 10 years' time, what are we going to be worried about? Who knows? Anyway, look, man, I got to run.
Right, Duncan, thanks again.
Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend.
I will do. You too, man. Cool. Enjoy. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.